Steelers camp, Albert Breer? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I am, and I've been here for a couple of days now, finding out all the things there are to do in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Love it. Love it. Like sit through a James Harrison 3-word press conference, Albert?
Yeah, that was actually pretty good. You know, I based on what he told us, we've got a lot of things to go ask Tomlin.
And what was the problem with asking him the questions that he thinks Tomlin should answer? What was that? What were the questions about, Albert?
Well, it was like, how are you going to be used? What's Keith Butler going to look like as the defensive coordinator? And so, I guess less is more was his approach with the answers to those.
So, is there an issue, or is this just James Harrison being Harrison?
No, he smiled at the end and walked off and said, "Good talk." You know, he can be hot and cold. You can get him sometimes, and he's a little better than others. This wasn't mean-spirited. He was just kind of having fun with it and deflected just about everything he was asked.
And Tomlin, during his press availability over the weekend, at one point just let out, "Man, I love training camp." He just loves it. I enjoyed that one.
Well, I still remember, every time I come here now, I remember that first year he was here. It's hard to believe it's his 9th year now, but I still remember how violent that first training camp he had was, and think about that every time he come back. And obviously the rules have changed and, traditional two-a-days anymore, but he's one of those coaches that really likes to kind of use training camp to see what guys are made of. And I don't think he'll ever be able to put on one that was as brutal as that first one that a lot of the players complained about and everything else. But he's one of those coaches who really wants training camp to be training camp in an old school way.
And obviously the questions are on the defensive side of the football for this team. Offensively, they're as good as they come. And defensively, now with LeBeau gone and that secondary essentially filled with names that we've been familiar with, the Steelers black and gold for so long, they're gone. Defensively is the issue, correct, Albert?
Right, and having a new coordinator, and I talked to Keith Butler at length about it today. It's interesting because they're not going to change the scheme, but they're going to change the approach to a certain degree. And what he said to me is, we want to try to evaluate every player and have them doing what they do best. And so he said with some of the defensive linemen, where those guys were kind of roadblocks in the defense in the past, he's going to get them going upfield more. He obviously just paid Cam Hayward, and he's a guy that they're going to be looking to have be a little bit more disruptive, and then do some more things with the linebackers. They've got 4 first-round picks, in Dupree and Timmons and Shazier and Jarvis Jones at the linebacker position. So it's going to be within the construct of the Dick LeBeau defense. But what you hear is they want to try to get the players in position where they're doing the things that they do well. And they were 18th in total defense last year. That's the first time they were in the bottom half of the league in that category in 23 years, going back to Chuck Knowles last year in Pittsburgh.
Albert Breer calling in from Latrobe, PA, Steelers camp, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Do the Steelers believe they see Garoppolo night one? Do they think that right now?
I think they're preparing for both. God knows that this could change in a hurry, and it could change in a hurry without Brady being exonerated completely. If that suspension sticks, and I think we all expect that there's going to be some suspension that's going to stick, maybe not the whole thing, but Brady pursues an injunction, gets an injunction, and he's playing week 1. So I can certainly tell you that the coaches here feel like they need to prepare themselves to play Tom Brady. Now, Garoppolo is a different type of quarterback, so they're going to have to prepare for that too. But a good thing for them right now is they've got time on their side. And remember this, because they play in that Hall of Fame game like the Vikings, they've got an extra week of training camp to get all of that together.
Right. Now, you spoke to Art Rooney about the report of ownership, or at least a faction of ownership, pressuring the commissioner to stick with the 4 games. What did Art Rooney say to you when you spoke to him?
He was vehement that this really is Rodgers' decision. Now, I can tell you what I know about the way these things work, Rich. Generally, Rodgers got people he leans on. He doesn't make every decision in a vacuum, and the bigger decisions he will consult with owners. After all, those are his bosses, right? And if you want to see the owners who are most influential, I know Steve Bisciotti's name was thrown out there and Jim Irsay's name was thrown out there, but those guys aren't on the list of guys that you'd normally see as the most influential guys. The guys who are the most influential guys are the guys who are on that executive committee, who he leaned on during the lockout. So we're talking about Rooney being one of them, Mara being another one. in a situation other than this, it would be Robert Kraft would be at the very top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's kind of hard sometimes to separate, okay, is he consulting with them or are they trying to influence him? There's some gray area there, and you can be talking about semantics. But I do know that that they're very they're vehement that this is Rodgers' decision, and I can tell you that those voices do get into Rodgers' ear. It's just it's how you want to paint that. Whether you want to paint that as owners trying to gain influence, or if you want to paint that as the commissioner trying to consult with some of the people that ultimately are responsible for his paycheck.
Well, what do you make of the Mike Pereira report saying that the NFL is going to institute new rules on how to handle the footballs during game, before game? The NFL hasn't made any announcement on this yet, but he says that the NFL has definitely informed their officials of this. And in the changes includes monitoring or gauging the air pressure mid-game, before game, writing it down. The fact that the NFL is codifying it in some way, shape, or form, as opposed to what we read in the Wells report, is that something that's going to be on the Brady team radar to say, okay, clearly the way that the Wells report depended on the whole more probable than not scenario in terms of figuring out the footballs, clearly there's a problem to the point where the NFL is straightening that up a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Albert?
Yeah, I mean, it's an admission. There's no question. There's an admission in there that we weren't doing it right. We weren't diligent enough. And if we're going to make this big a deal out of this subject, then we need to treat it seriously. And, so that's what you see there, where they're, actually going to log the PSI levels. And, I mean, I couldn't have told you what the PSI level of a football was last year at this time, but everybody knows now. And I think it's something that would certainly find its way into the lawsuit, where you say, okay, you're admitting here that you weren't doing it the right way before, if this is indeed as serious an issue as you're asserting. And so I know what Mike reported there is right on. My understanding is it's not final yet, but those are the concepts that they're working with right now, and I would expect those to be in place. I mean, I think you could also make the argument, why not just take the balls out of the quarterback's hands and just give them the balls now,
Mm-hmm.
and just take that out of it altogether. Just say, you know what? You had your chance. You had 9 years where you could do with what you wanted with all the footballs. Now, because of this, we've got to rein that back in, and now we're going to give you the ball rather than you giving it to us.
What can you tell me about Russell Wilson before I let you go?
Well, I think if he does something in the next week, and I don't think that that's completely off the board, but if he does something in the next week, I think it's going to be a more traditional quarterback contract. If, as he and his agent and other people have made noise about, if he really wants to do something groundbreaking, more like a baseball contract with heavy on guaranteed money that's kind of, off the board from an NFL standpoint, you have to wait till after the year. Because of that $1.5 million salary that he has for 2015, the Seahawks have the leverage now. If he plays that out, incurs those 16 games of injury risk, gets to the end of his deal, and now you're looking at a $25 million franchise tag number to put that exclusive franchise tag on him, then the leverage slides back over to Russell Wilson. So that's the game they're playing right now is, the Seahawks have him not go into the year at $1.5 million are expecting some sort of give back, and the give back there would be to do a traditional, normal quarterback contract. If, again, you want to do something groundbreaking, then you got to take that risk on those 16 games, and we'll see whether or not he's willing to do that before training camp.
Before I let you go, I got about 30 seconds left with you. Who's going to be your starting quarterback in Ohio State? Who is it going to be? What do you think?
It's going to be J.T. Barrett.
Really?
I just think the coaches trust him more. I mean, I think it's J.T. Barrett. I think the coaches trust him more. I think it kind of sucks for Cardell, but my understanding is his grasp of the offense is off the chart. And from a leadership standpoint, he's great. So, it's good that it's down to 2 now, and all those guys will get all the reps. The more physically talented guy clearly is Cardell Jones, but it's a trust thing.
Yeah, I hear you. At least, maybe you get through the bump potentially against Virginia Tech, and you get all those cookies before you got Michigan State and Michigan anyway, Albert. So you can get that up.
Who's going to win the Michigan job? Is it going to be the Iowa transfer?
That one I have no read on Harbaugh at all. Zero. Other than the fact that he's my guy.
You're not alone on that one.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.